Hey everybody, it's Tuesday, it's 3 o'clock. That means it's Tech Tuesday. Today I'm going to be talking about a national survey on broadband service that came out recently that I think has some interesting information if you're a broadband service provider or a broadband customer, but I think primarily broadband service providers will be interested in some of this information. So I'll be right back. Thanks for joining me. I'm Rick Uzzi from Zcorum, and again today our topic is this national broadband survey. It's something that Consumer Reports did, so Consumer Reports have been around forever, and I was happy to see this up there. A lot of times you can't get access to their information, but I was able to find this. And as you can see here, it was June 2021 when these results came out. And it looks like it was a good survey. It looks like it was done a good scientific survey based on interviews that they conducted between June 4th and the 28th. Administered by NORC at the University of Chicago. Not sure what that is. So they did 2,565 interviews, and 2,424 of those were by web, and it looks like 141 were by phone. That's become a challenge for people doing surveys, is getting them by phone these days. Final data was weighted to be proportionally representative of the U.S. adult population. It says here, I was looking at this later, it says by age, gender, race, Hispanic, ethnicity, housing, tenure, telephone status, education, and census division, which I think includes a lot of the same parameters. I don't see on here that's necessarily representative of where people live, which would be important for broadband as far as rural versus urban and some of the questions on here, so I don't know if that's the case, but that was one thing that kind of stuck out to me there. You can see again, prepared by Consumer Reports Survey Research Department, July 2021. Here's the web address for Consumer Reports, cr.org, if you're interested in that. So first question, what, if any, of the following services does your household use to access the internet? And they give a couple of different ways here, one of which is, to me, kind of glaring in the fact that it's missing or could be confused. So broadband, such as high-speed internet through a fixed cable or fiber connection. Wireless, such as only having access to the internet through a smartphone data plan. DSL or dial-up, such as internet through a phone line. So that would be twisted pair phone line, older technology, especially dial-up. I don't know how many of those 5 actually have dial-up. That said they answered that one that way. My household does not have internet access, so 3% there. Now, what I found was maybe a little confusing was it does not mention fixed wireless. It says broadband such as high-speed internet through a fixed cable or fiber connection. It doesn't mention fixed wireless. When it says wireless, it mentions smartphone data plan, or such as smartphone data plan. It says up here, can't highlight that, I guess, or can I? Yeah. So responses were shown in the following order: broadband, DSL, or dial-up, wireless, and my household does not have internet access. So if that's really how it was on the survey, then I would think people who had fixed wireless might have selected wireless. But if it was actually answered on the survey, or if the questions were phrased in such a way as this, where it had the example of a smartphone, then maybe people did answer it correctly. So I don't know. So it could be that this 15% here includes some fixed wireless users. Next question, which, if any, are reasons that you do not have high-speed broadband service, such as a fixed wired connection at your home? So talking about specifically here, if you do have cell phone service only as far as your internet, why is that? They say select all, it applies, so you can't say one reason or another. It's going to be maybe a combo of things here. So I access the internet and do everything I need using my smartphone, and a lot of people kind of feel that way. It costs too much. And that could be those two things. There could be some people that answer both of these, right? So they could say, well, I'm using my smartphone because I can do pretty much everything I need to do, but that's also because when I look at fixed wireless, it's just too expensive. Especially because of the fact that maybe they can do pretty much everything on their smartphone and they feel they don't want to pay that extra money. Makes sense. I access the internet and do everything I need to do using my DSL dial-up connection. Well, that would be surprising if they have dial-up, but I suppose maybe sending an email. DSL, you can, if it's not a bad DSL connection, you can get a lot of things done. Maybe a slower one maybe would not be the best experience if you have lots of people streaming video, that kind of thing. It's not available where I live. 25% say it's not available where they live. So this maybe does include some rural customers in here. Again, I don't know if they're weighted to be exactly how the United States is distributed, but 25% say they just don't have it. And then this is interesting, 16% say they just don't want it. Oh, and I forgot, this 25% could be encompassed in some of these other things. Not really, though, because I guess you either don't have it or you have it, right? So what I'm saying, it's not available where I live. So you either have it or you don't. So that 25% is probably representative of the answers. I just don't want it. That could be because they just don't feel they need it. That could be because it costs too much. It's like too expensive, I don't want it. And again, that's 16%. So I thought that was surprisingly high. I guess, maybe not, because as I've said before on this broadcast, if you go out there and spend lots of money to bring broadband to areas that don't have it, or even more so if you bring higher speed broadband to areas where maybe it's not as fast, like if you're trying to get, maybe you got 25 megabits per second and you're trying to get to 100 or a gig or something like that, that doesn't mean people are going to buy it, because maybe they just don't want it. So I just was noting here that if you've got 250 million adults in the United States, and this again is representative of the adult population, that would translate to 40 million people that are saying they just don't want internet. Now, again, that could be some combination of I don't want it because it's too expensive, or I don't want it because it's where I am, it's not very good. Maybe it's just a slow DSL connection, that kind of thing. So we don't know. When choosing your current internet service, how many broadband fixed wired connection internet providers were available to choose from? So 26% said that's the only provider in my area. 32% said this one and one alternative. So it could be like a cable provider and a phone company. Some people have 3, some have 4, and some have 5 or more. Now, this is not supposed to include fixed wireless because it does say fixed wired connection. So I'm not sure what these 3 or 4 or 5 might be. I guess there could be a couple of fiber providers. So that would be unusual to have that many. I don't know if they're counting. They shouldn't be counting their cell phone service because it does say fixed wired connection. Is your internet service a standalone service, or do you get it bundled with other services such as cable television or phone service? And you can see here it's split pretty well 50-50. There's 4% that don't know, but 49% say that it's standalone and 47% say it's bundled with something. And we've seen obviously this trend over time the last several years as people maybe who had their phone service and internet with the phone company dropped their phone service because they got a cell phone plan and they didn't feel like they needed a landline anymore. You've got people who have cable TV and their broadband, and they dropped their cable TV because they felt like they could stream all the entertainment that they want right over their broadband connection. So we have certainly seen that. We're starting to see, people are starting to think about bundles again, and obviously ISPs want to do that because that provides additional value to this. They don't want to be a dumb pipe, so that provides additional value to the service that they're providing. So they're starting to bundle, or they have been for some time, maybe things like security services, other kinds of things. Maybe even if they're dropping the pay TV, the old cable TV, maybe the QAM kind of cable TV, they're adding in an IPTV service, or they're bundling in a streaming service. So maybe they're bundling in Netflix or HBO Max or something like that people can get through that service and then pay one provider. So we are seeing some bundling happen, but these folks are saying, as far as they're concerned, it's about split 50-50. Approximately, how much do you currently pay per month, including taxes and fees, for your internet service? If your internet is part of a bundle, please only tell us about the cost of the internet. So they're saying, please only tell us about the internet cost, not everything together. And 16% say less than $50, so most likely a very minimum speed maybe, depending on where they live. 50 to less than 75 is 37%, 75 to less than 100, $24, and then 100 or more, 15 people. So that's a high speed, that would be a pretty high speed connection. It could be just an area that's really hard to reach and it's expensive for that reason. If somebody gets Starlink, this doesn't mention satellite, that's another thing that's not on here, which is not a big percentage of internet users currently, although that's going to be growing with Starlink, with Elon Musk's venture through SpaceX. We're going to see more satellite users in rural areas where maybe they have a fixed connection now that they're not real happy with, and they'll maybe move over to that. So, but that's going to be about $100, $99, I think is the retail price on that. So, and then 8% unsure. So you can see, this is kind of the sweet spot in here, let's say 50 to 100, somewhere in there for their broadband service. How often do you review your internet bill before paying? Well, most people do. There. How easy or difficult is it to understand your internet services bill, such as the fees, base price, etc.? Most people find it pretty easy, 76% or so, somewhat easy to very easy. And there's not much to a broadband bill. It's not like your phone bill. There's not all that stuff on there. A lot of times that it's kind of confusing. How often do you currently work from home? So obviously this has changed, and this was taken during what is still considered a pandemic, and a lot of people still working at home, but probably not at the height of the pandemic. Some people have gone back into the office, but you can see a lot of people are working at home, but I was surprised at how many never work from home, so 39%. Now that does include, there's lots of service people, obviously, that just can't work from home. I mean, if you work in a restaurant or doing anything where you need to be at the location, you can't work from home. And the other thing I noted here was the unemployment rate is currently about 5.4%. So this 27% that say they do not currently have a job is surprising to me. Again, I don't know about this, how this was taken, and who the folks. A lot of times people who don't have a job at home can answer the phone, or they have time to answer surveys, so maybe it is a little bit skewed that way. We just don't know. That's a surprisingly large number of people that don't have a job currently. And I'm assuming if you are on unemployment, then you would be counted in the unemployment figure, so I don't know. Does your work from home require you to use the internet? And most people say yes. So obviously if you're working at home, you're going to need the internet. Apparently there's 6% of people out there that are working at home that don't need the internet. Maybe not needing it for anything really specific. Maybe they're stuffing envelopes, maybe they're baking cakes out of their house, that kind of thing, and they just don't use the internet. For this next question, we'd like to know how well your home internet service meets your household's needs, including work, school, entertainment, personal, etc. So a lot of people, were finding when they were stuck at home, whether it was school or work, that their internet was not meeting their needs. So this would probably take into account those people that had to upgrade their service since then. So a lot of, most people find it serves them very well. You can see here 81% say good to excellent as far as speed, and only 5% say poor to very poor. I would imagine that this, like I say, if this had been taken just a few months or a month or two into the pandemic, when people were suddenly forced to be home and they're realizing, oh, my internet's not going to hold up, I'm trying to do stuff, my kids are trying to do stuff for school, it probably would have been higher. But right now, most people are very happy with that. Reliability of your home internet connection, very similar to how the speed of their home internet connection. 80% say good to excellent on reliability. Compared to before the pandemic began, would you say you are using the internet in your household less, about the same, or more now as you did prior to the pandemic? So small percentage, very small, say less. I'm not sure why. About the same, 54, and as one would expect, 43% say they're using it more. And some of that is work related. Some of that, frankly, is just escape related. People have, especially during the midst of the pandemic, when people kind of really seriously stuck at home and there were not a lot of places you could go. I mean, the internet was their entertainment, and a lot of that has maintained. So people that were streaming shows before, or during the pandemic, they started streaming more, are still streaming more. So they kind of got into that habit, even though things are now more open. Now, more open in certain places. Obviously, there's the Delta variant that's causing some locations, not as much in this country, but some locations are starting to shut down a little bit more now. In fact, New Zealand has pretty much closed the borders, and apparently if you are caught outside talking to anybody, they will, I don't know if they arrest you or they give you a ticket or what, but it's a little bit crazy in some places. Since the pandemic began in early March 2020, have you had to upgrade your internet package to accommodate your household's needs? And surprisingly, 84% said no. 16% said yes, they did upgrade their needs. So that kind of shows you that the internet that most people had during that time, assuming that it was a fixed broadband connection, had good internet. So that it was able to handle that, and I know a lot of service providers stepped up and did what they could to increase the capacity of their plants, especially on the upstream. They needed to do certain things to get their upstream in better shape for things like live streaming, like Zoom calls, those kinds of things. So they've done a good job with that, and most people have not had to upgrade that. How much more would you say you're paying per month to upgrade your internet? So for those people that did, and this is please include all costs associated with that. So I guess this is a breakdown of this 16%, assuming that they did this correctly. Yeah, here, show if Q11 was yes. So they only showed this question to these 16% of people right here. And it says, let's see, so 23% said it was less than $10 a month to upgrade. Then you can see the other figures here for 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, etc. The percentages right here. And I was noting here that this likely includes people, I think, who had no home internet, because it doesn't necessarily say on this if you had to upgrade your internet package to accommodate your household needs. If I were somebody that was on, let's say, a mobile plan, and that's how I had my internet, and then I had to buy or had to get a fixed wired connection, a broadband connection, whether it be cable modem or fiber or whatever, because of the pandemic, I would have, I think, answered yes here. And in that case, that might account for some of these larger amounts. You know, more not so much as somebody going, let's say, from 25 meg to 100 meg, but maybe going from no fixed wired connection to having to pay $40 or $50 a month for or more for an internet connection that they didn't have to pay for before at home. So that may include that. We don't know. How satisfied or dissatisfied are you with the price you pay and the value for your internet service? So again, I think this is pretty good news for ISPs. At least the majority, 57%, say anywhere from somewhat to completely satisfied. So somewhat satisfied, that's a common answer for people. You don't want people to think, when you're answering these surveys, I know I do this, I don't want people to think, oh, this is a great deal, because I'm afraid they'll raise the price when they get my answers on a survey. Of course, this was Consumer Reports and not a particular ISP taking the survey. But and then you see here, for those who are dissatisfied, that are not happy paying that. And let's see, how easy or difficult is it for you to afford your monthly internet costs? And again, most people say, 3/4 say it's somewhat easy or very easy to afford their internet. So these are obviously the people that are working that are able to afford that, and probably a lot of those, you know, not paying those $100 a month kinds of prices for that. Within the past 12 months, have you tried to negotiate or bargain with your internet service provider for a better price or better features? And yes, 25% yes, we did, for a better price, and 15% said for better features, and that would be such as increased speed, upgraded equipment, extension of a promotional rate, that kind of thing. Or no, I did not negotiate at all. And extension of a promotional rate, I think that is probably how most of these things get done, and that would be the features as well as price, I think. Because you know how this works, right? So you've got a price for your internet for a year or 2 years, depending on, you know, who you sign up with and when. And then when that time period is over, then you look at your internet bill. Hopefully you look at it. Hopefully there's one of the people that actually look at their bill every month. So if you look at your bill and you realize it went up $50 a month, you know, it was maybe, I don't know, it was maybe 100, now it's 150. Maybe that's a bundled bill of everything, right? Different things. And you're like, what in the world happened? So you call and you find out that your promotion has ended. And what do? Well, you go ahead and you say, well, I need to cancel this. And then they send you to the customer retention department, something like that. And that department talks to you and you tell them, I just can't, that's just too much. I need to cancel. And they don't want to see you go. So what do? They quite often will extend your promotion price-wise, including features. So, you know, basically they'll give you the same package you have. And you say, okay, we'll extend this for another 6 months or a year, so we don't lose you. Or, you know, and that's really for a better price, I guess. So you're reducing what your boosted price was back down to what it was before. Sometimes it is features. So sometimes they'll say, okay, well, you know, we don't have a promotion on price going right now, but we will throw in Showtime for 6 months if you're canceling your cable TV and your broadband internet package and all that kind of stuff. So you'll see that, you know, like a better feature. So that's kind of a fallback for them, is to give you something else for a period of time. So, and then you've got 64% who don't negotiate at all. So that is a mistake. If you are internet consumer. I hate to say that because I know there's broadband service providers watching this, but that's really, I think, what any consumer would do would be to call and see if you can get that price back again. And for the ISP, they do want to keep you, because if you've been there that long, the longer you stay with your ISP, then the better it is for them, because a lot of the cost in getting a customer is kind of up front. Get that customer on, there's all those costs associated with it, especially if you're going to be eating some of the setup fees and maybe some of the equipment. You put the equipment out there, and that's maybe getting paid so much per month if you're doing it like a lease or whatever. So it takes some time for that customer to be profitable. So the longer you stay with that ISP, the happier they are to keep you, especially if you pay your bill on time. So they're going to do what they can to try to maintain you as a customer. Were you successful when you try to negotiate or bargain with your internet service provider for a better price or feature? And they were shown, depending on what they selected up here, whether it was better price or feature, they were shown this question or the answer for that. Yes, I was successful in getting better features. Yes, I was successful in getting a better price. So about 49% and 42% on those two. And then 51% said, no, I was not successful. So these percentages will be subsets of these figures. So let's see, so how does that work? So yes, I was successful in getting better features, 49%. So that's 49% of this 15% were successful. And then that's 42% for price of this 25% were successful in getting a better price. And then the 51% were not successful. How satisfied or dissatisfied are you overall with your current internet service? So again, this is good news, I think, for ISPs. So often we hear about broadband in the U.S. being bad. It's too slow. It's not reliable. In fact, that's not the case when you ask people a question like this. Now, this doesn't specifically talk about, let's say, how satisfied are you with their customer service. So if you have to call in and get technical support, a lot of times ISPs get dinged on that, especially the big, faceless, huge ISPs. A lot of times community, your local, regional kind of guys, especially local guys, do a pretty good job with internet service because they live in that town, they go to church in that town, they want to make sure people are happy. But you see here that the numbers are pretty good. So 71% are anywhere from somewhat to completely satisfied overall with their current internet service. And then you've got some people that are somewhat dissatisfied to very dissatisfied right there. And then finally, there's a lot going on now with municipal broadband. Since the pandemic, a lot of cities and towns are looking at getting into the broadband business because they've looked around and said, you know what, our community, they're not getting good service from the incumbent. Could be that maybe they just have DSL service, or people are not happy with the customer service that the company's providing. They're not happy with the speeds because there's just one provider and there's not the competition. There's not the impetus for them to up their game as far as service and speeds. So a lot of cities have been exploring this, and there's been pushback from lots of lobbying from the large ISPs like your MSOs, your large fiber providers, that they don't want munis in the business because that obviously takes away business from them. So there are some cities and states that have made municipal broadband where you cannot set it up, and you can if there's no other provider there. So if you've got a provider in the city, even if they're providing terrible service, then there's some places that say you can't set up your own muni broadband. Now, a lot of that's changing. A lot of these laws are being stricken down, or places that have tried to implement laws. There was something in Ohio where they tried to implement that in the budget, and that was struck down. So because of the pandemic, you're seeing more muni broadband activity. More munis are getting the business, or they're threatening to get in the business, or maybe they're doing a public-private partnership with an existing provider. So the muni says, hey, we will lay fiber in our area, and then you, Mr. Existing ISP, can come in and you can provide the service over that. So we'll kind of work together on that. So it's being done a number of ways. But they asked consumers this, and 75% said, yeah, we'd like to see that municipal broadband be allowed. And then 25% said, no, it shouldn't. And the reason for that is the same reason that others are giving, is that it would be unfair to the private internet companies who have to compete with government-funded networks, which could interfere with the growth of technology and freedom of internet usage. So this is basically these are the two ways that people are looking at this particular issue. So it's being looked at from the free market perspective of, yeah, we need more competitors, everything should be free market, and let that be how it's done. And it's also being looked at as, it's not really a free market if the muni gets in the business, because they get tax dollars and we don't get tax dollars, so they're going to be able to subsidize that. So I think the way it really should be handled should be, if there's good internet in the city, then the city should have no reason to get into business. So just make sure, if you're an existing ISP and you're covering that particular town or municipality, make sure that you're providing good service, and then there won't be need for a competitor as long as you keep the service good and the price is reasonable. If you have your prices too high, the municipality is going to look at it and go, you know what, it's just too expensive. We can do this less expensively. So, all right, hopefully this was useful to you, helpful to you. As again, I think that we see that internet in the United States, from this very reasonable survey here, is doing very well. Consumers seem to be very happy with their internet. They're reasonably happy with the price and the service. Seems like most people have access, and there are a number of people that, while they don't have access, don't want it. We don't know exactly why. So I found that pretty interesting. Thanks for joining me. If you found this interesting, give me a thumbs up on the video, and go ahead and hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and make sure you click the little bell. And when you click the bell, you will be notified whenever I am live, and that's every Tuesday at 3 o'clock. I appreciate you joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.